All right, we're on, so we'll get started. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item is that we need to approve the agenda. However, first, I do want to make a motion to add a consent agenda item. It would be item number H or letter H for a signing bonus resolution for elementary music teacher positions that was added over the weekend. That was accepted over the weekend, excuse me. So with that change, I make a motion to approve the agenda. Second. And a motion second, all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. I'd like to say thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Those here in the audience and those that are watching online, thanks for being here. And we have a recognition of one of our staff members tonight, so we'll go ahead and get started with that. I think Greg or anyone else needed for that.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me come. I'm happy to have Coach Mark Henry here tonight to recognize his accomplishments for this past football season. He was selected as a member of the Tri-Bowl coaching staff on the West squad this year. We're very excited for him and proud of him. This guy's been a part of this staff for 18 years. Bleeds orange and black. He's put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this program. I know it doesn't go without, a lot of talented young men and great assistants, but I'm very happy for Mark and we just appreciate the opportunity for him to be here. Mark?
Well, I'd like to start with, how about those Chiefs? But thanks for the opportunity to get recognized tonight. Like Greg said, it's an honor to be invited to coach in the Shrine Bowl. And again, that accomplishment is largely due in part to having great assistants and a very nice group of boys this year that led to our success. But me being the head coach, I guess I'm the one that gets recognized, but just good all around. So appreciate the opportunity to come in and been at it a long time and hope to keep it going. Looking forward to the new facility. So
Mark is the second coach in the program history to serve as an assistant or coach on the Tri-Bowl staff. Coach Larry Weaver's back in the mid-80s, I think, was a member of that staff.
We're very thankful to have you represent our school there, and we're just excited for you to be selected. So congratulations.
You're awesome. Thank you. Good job, Mark.
Yeah.
And family. And doesn't go without a good family.
Right.
Who loses more sleep during the football season, the coach or the secretary? Yeah. That's what I thought.
you guys can sit in the stands and listen to everybody. I don't hear it.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to citizens open. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we're gonna go to receive communications. I did have one thing that I wanted to mention tonight. So we've seen quite a few things from Grove Clay County being posted on Facebook and otherwise different places, and some great things that are happening in our community. And in addition to that, USD 379 was nominated for the Grove Clay County Award for Best Nonprofit for the year. So wanted to just make mention of that and congratulate everybody that makes that possible. So it takes a tremendous amount of people, administration, staff, all kinds of folks that are part of that process and wouldn't be possible without any of them. So congratulations, and I want to say thanks to Grove Clay County for that nomination for our district. So that was really good. Anybody else have any communications that they want to share? Okay. Oh, and I also at is it at your location this weekend, right? It's in Wakefield.
Saturday.
The event is being held at Wakefield this Saturday, so
Sounds like it's gonna be a packed house.
sounds like it's gonna be pretty busy. So lots of nominations and lots of people come.
They told me today 210 people have bought tickets,
Okay,
which is double what they had last year.
how many can you hold?
350.
Okay, good. Okay, that's great. Okay, we'll move on then to citizens open forum, and I don't believe that we have any presenters this evening. Positive board comments would be next. Anything anyone wants to share?
I'd start. I wanted to congratulate Gabby and Alyssa from the high school on a successful regionals. Gabby was champion. I believe Alyssa was runner up, and both of them qualified for state. And then also heard a lot of thank you, and I want to also say thank you for supporting the middle school girls wrestling program. They've got a pretty significant team. They had hosted their first meet a couple weeks ago and had a great turnout, not only from people whose kids were on the squad, but others in the community that came and watched. And it's great to see what girls wrestling is doing here in Pleasant.
And I just was attending events in the past month, and it's fun to watch kids and participate in what they love to do. So we're finishing up winter sports in the next couple weeks with middle school NCKL tournaments, and high school has a few more weeks, but yeah, it's fun to watch the kids.
Okay, anybody else have anything to share? Okay, nothing else, then we'll move on to consent agenda.
Does item H show up here?
I was gonna say, I
you
haven't
can
read that.
read
I got it show up in 90 August. Wanted to make sure it was added before we moved to approve it. I see it now.
Questions from anyone? Okay, we'll give you a chance to do that. Yeah, chance to review item H.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motions, I think to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Everybody, I don't have much of a voice, so I might have to pass the mic to you. I can't talk, but so far. Move on to reports then. First thing is board reports, and I know that Linda has mentioned she wants to report on AASB information that she received over the weekend.
Yeah, it's actually as a result of Travis Kelsey's little comment, know your role. And I thought as school board members, we should probably know our role, at least I needed to know what my role was in this. Okay. So this is a document from AASB that just lists out the leadership responsibilities of school board members. And on the backside, it's the critical requirements for school board membership for effective results. I won't read it all, but if anyone in the audience wants a copy, I did make an extra copy. I just think it's good for us in the same way that we have the strategic planning items here in front of us, and as we make decisions and as we interact outside of the office, for my own benefit, it's good for me to be reminded like what my job is as a board member, kind of stay in your lane. Thought process for me personally, but since I found the document, I thought it was pretty useful. I wanted to share it with everyone else. Just the areas of the critical requirements for school board membership for effective results. It talks about board unity, leadership, executive function, staff and group relationships, personal relationships, and courageous action. So do with it as you wish. I just thought it was a great document as I really spent some time to think about it and apply it to what I do as a school board member, and just wanted to share it with everyone's. Great, thanks.
Reminders, thanks, Linda. Anybody else have anything they want to share? We'll move on to the superintendent's report then.
Thank you. We received our preliminary legal max letter that we get every year in the fall. Wanted to share a few highlights with you, most of which were anticipated and we were aware of and been talking to you guys about for most of the fall semester. Some positives. Last year we were funded on 1281.5 FTE. We always know what we're going to be funded on for the following year because it's the year prior or preceding year, whichever is higher. And our preliminary adjusted enrollment will be 1292.2 this year. So we'll have that's an increase in about 10 additional FTE for next year that we can anticipate. So that's really good news. The other significant factor this year that we've been talking about, I think since July, was when we first noticed our direct cert apps were way up over any previous year, but we learned that that was because of the change in the qualifications for free and reduced lunch, and that there are a lot more families qualified for direct certified at the beginning of the year. Luckily, we were on top of that. Give August some kudos for catching that and seeing that discrepancy in the data. So that allowed us to get ahead of it during the budget process in July. And we were able to increase our estimated number of students that qualify for free lunch quite significantly at the beginning of the year, which we're fortunate because we won't be finding ourselves in a position where we have to republish, and many other school districts are now talking about republishing because they didn't catch that data ahead of time. So
Way to go, August.
yeah, so it was good. And so we will be an increase of about 50 FTE. That's not 50 students, that's 50 FTE, and the free weighting's about 0.485. So half, call it half. So we're about 100 students, more students qualified this year than last year. As a refresher, that becomes a required transfer out of general fund and LOB now with the new law last year. So we have to do that required transfer throughout the year, during the year, and at the end of the year over to at-risk. And then anything you spend out of at-risk can only be on the approved pre-qualified expenses, which is the research-based list they put out. And it's, think generally research-based things and or people that are targeted to directly serve the students that qualify. And so we were able again to get ahead of that at the beginning of the year, and we're able to allocate a lot more approved expenses over to the at-risk fund. And so we're in good shape. It's good news, good news. So that was pretty significant and something interesting, and I'm not sure why, but our transportation weighting had been decreasing. And remember that we only get funded for students that live outside of 2.5 miles. And generally speaking, my hypothesis is fewer and fewer families are living in outside
The
of
outreaches of the county.
but this year it did increase by about 5 students. And so that's good.
Can you
news.
remind us of transportation meeting?
What weighting it is?
Yeah,
Well, there's a lot of calculations, and
okay,
so
so it's not, that's why I'm not remembering it, because it's pretty complicated as to like the distance from the school and is that correct? Okay.
just and that also goes into that 308. We could go deep in, but so we get to depreciate vehicles, we get
Okay.
to do several other things. Is it the 308, Andrea? Is that right? On the 3, and so there's a lot of factors. I could probably print something and get it to you. That would make
I
more
just
sense.
hadn't thought about it in a while, and since you brought it up, that's okay.
Our estimated legal max is 10.3 million. And we know that's always inflated because we overestimate, in particular, as it relates to flow through money that we get through special education. And so that Cat A piece, and we always overestimate again, so we don't have to republish. And then we know that that is going to come down and align to our actual numbers. And so we will probably end up being around 10.1, somewhere in there by the time it's all said and done. Any questions on our legal max? I can kind of pass that around the table as I'm going if anyone has any interest. What's in blue is the difference from last year to this year. August can make a copy for you if you are interested. Any questions on any of that?
Pretty good news.
Yeah, very good news, especially the enrollment piece.
Mhm.
So for the last 4 years, we've increased in enrollment.
Yeah.
And that's for the first time, the previous decade prior to that, we've been decreasing.
Mhm.
So a good trend in data. Legislative update, it is that time of the season. We rely heavily on our advocacy groups that are advocating for special education. I included some information from KSB and board docs that you can read at your leisure if you're so interested. So we follow KNEA, USA, and KSB are the main organizations that we follow and rely on to advocate for public education this time of year. There are some bills that I wanted to point out that are in various committees right now. And House Bill 2218 and 2048 and Senate Bill 128 all kind of blend together the same themes. And so those themes are, think vouchers, education savings account, tuition tax credits, those kinds of things. And getting some traction in the House and the Senate. And the Education Committee is hearing testimony on several of those in the next several weeks. And so I thought I'd just share some of the facts and some of the data that comes from some of those general ideas. And so KSB says that House Bill 2218 sets up a system of unregulated schools funded by Kansas taxpayers. And the key here is not that they're against necessarily some of these programs, as long as they come with accountability pieces. And so when we talk vouchers or savings accounts or tuition tax credits going to non-accredited schools or private schools, they aren't held to the same accountability standards as accredited public schools are. And so whether that be financial, student driven, and they can also select and not select certain students, which creates a system of inequities. Some states, if you're interested in the research, Oklahoma and Arizona have experimented with some of these types of programs. And they've discovered that a lot of fraud takes place underneath these systems. And, you know, an example in one particular state would be the, if you look at like the vouchers. So if I go enroll in a non-accredited school, the state sends me, the personal family, the base state aid. So is what happens a lot in these experiments is a family will say, well, heck, I'm in a homeschool. They'll submit, they'll get paid their base aid per pupil. And then after September 20th goes by, here comes the kids back to public education, and public education is not funded to educate that student. And so that's where KSB is saying, hey, if we're really looking at these kinds of programs, there really needs to be some accountability pieces here to protect all parties. So in one example that KSB discusses is the Epic charter schools in Oklahoma. Legislators freed up some of this voucher system and ended up creating inadvertently fraudulent schools that start popping up and opening up again because there's no one holding them accountable. They collect all this state money to educate students, and then they go out of business, or they quit serving students, or a student with special needs can't be eligible or be served in that program, even though the law requires that we serve those students. And so just some things to think about. And if you have a strong opinion on any of those particular topics or bills, I would encourage you to reach out to our local legislators and have a conversation about that. Any questions or comments related to, and again, I probably put too much in your board pack, but it's all available publicly on KSB's website under their advocacy link. You can read everything that they put out to the public.
I get KASB's updates, and then they also put out a weekly podcast that you can listen to about what happened that week from their advocacy standpoint. So you can listen to those.
Anita has arranged for some of our legislators to attend our next
April.
April
Yes.
tele meeting. And so a big topic of discussion there will be this talk of funding special education excess costs As you'll remember, a couple months ago, I shared some data, what that means for USD 379. And we supplement our special education fund between $600,000 and $700,000 a year. So you think over a 10-year time period, we're talking $6 to $7 million. If fully funded, could be put back into our system to serve all kids. So with really, there's some really good information about in that packet. And again, it's on KSB's website. It's called SPED Funding Q&A. And it will kind of talk through some more of the details that surround that topic. So statutorily, special education is supposed to be funded at 92%. And it's somewhere in the low 70s, 71% currently. And so it's a significant piece. The governor did put a plan in her budget that the plan is to fully fund excess costs over a 5-year time period. And so the latest that I saw in committee was some talk on from certain individuals trying to make a case that special ed was funded through LOB and some things like that. So just be really careful and educate yourself and be knowledgeable about the information that's being put out there. I'm happy to provide any of our own district data, financial data, if you need that or you would be interested in that.
But they're coming when to what meeting is your April meeting? Okay.
Elaine Bowers, I have first. She was gonna Zoom and have some other Zoom, but she's gonna come in person, so I need to reach out to see if she's having any of those other ones come, but I've given her the names.
It's gathered a little bit more steam than I thought it might, actually, when they first started really talking about it at the end of last year, so. I mean, that's a good sign, hopefully. There's some good things coming. Needs to.
The stadium construction update, the footings for the grandstand are complete. The grandstand and press box, they're in production and they'll arrive in late May or early June. And the foundation for the restaurant concession building is poured and in place. It's pretty neat to watch the students be involved from start to finish on that. Hadn't really thought about it, but with the Tiger House, they're very experienced pouring concrete, digging footings, tying steel, a lot of those things. And so they were up there and learned how hard concrete work is. But Mr. Fitzenmeyer does a great job lining them out and teaching them some of those tricks of the trade. We're very fortunate to have Craig Easterberg on staff too, because he has a long history of being in the construction world and was able to, when he had time, would get up there and help teach them some of those intricate details on that type of work. So that was pretty exciting. Mr. Meyer does have the students building the walls down in his shop area now. And that's a practice they did a lot with the Tiger House. Get the framing up in the shop, and then they'll bring it up to the site and put those in. And so again, good experience there. The excavation crew, United Sports, that rain and snow delayed them on another project they're on in Kansas, but they're going to be here early next week, and they will start some of that site work and turf work, and they predict a 4 to 5 week installation. And so it will take some coordination and flexibility on the part of our track teams this spring. It'll be a 1-year deal, but they've met several times and have developed some ideas. They are finalizing plans to move our middle school JV and varsity track meet this spring to an alternate host site. We didn't have bathrooms, won't have bathrooms. We'll have some construction going on and things like that. So they are making plans to do that, but it's going to take coordination and flexibility for one season, but we'll get through it. Field lighting will be later on in the spring towards the end, if not after track season. They'll remove the poles from auto unruh in the coming future and store those until it's time to reinstall them up at the new site. The new owners are being super flexible on utilizing anything that we need or could use at the new site. And so our staff has been slowly clearing out anything that we own or property that we own and taking care of that. Had some volunteer support to get the sound system that's we're going to reuse at the new site out of the auto unruh. That old sound system will be moved. I say old, they say it's not that old, but in very good shape, so we're gonna reuse that. Something really exciting to share is we have a group of volunteers that have a lot of interest in looking at the possibility on the east side of the auto unruh stadium. You have the stone archways. A group of volunteers that wants to remove those from that site, and the new owners have given us the ability to do that, or them the ability to do that if it's feasible, and move them up to the new site. And those would be the main entrance to the new site, would be the archways, stone archways from auto unruh. And so I think that's really exciting, with the possibility of preserving some of the history and seeing some of that up at the new site. And again, just a testament to the volunteers and helpfulness of the community to chip in and try to accomplish some of these things at no cost to us. Then the last piece is the owner scope. And that was the piece, as you recall, that we did not bid out. All the other pieces are bid out, contracts are in place, and they're moving forward. And the main pieces with that owner scope is your smaller items like your sidewalks, the visitor bleacher pad, extending the ADA parking, some stairs and some site work. And within that particular piece of the budget, we're looking at ways to best accomplish that work throughout the spring once it starts warming up. John Sweeney was with On the Double Contracting. He was the contractor out of Leavenworth that did the bleacher piers. And he's worked all over the country and he's shown some interest in maybe helping us accomplish some of that work. So we're going to kind of keep evaluating that and see where we end up there. But that's kind of the highlight of that project. Any questions on that?
What size of press box? I know you're talking about fundraising for a bigger one, but which one did you order?
The 48 by 30 or 48 by 8 by 48, 8 by 48. So the middle one, not the biggest, not the smallest, the one in the middle.
So how are we paying for that?
We shifted the bleacher work. So they had in their original scope of work, they were going to move our existing home bleachers and pour the concrete pad. And they had that line item at about 41,000. So it covered the additional cost of the press box and left enough money in there for us at a market price to pour the concrete. We can get the concrete done a lot cheaper than they were going to do it, because they were going to have to sub it out.
Yeah.
And so it'll, and we had some other donations come in. So.
Any questions from Mr. Lawson?
Our March, just a reminder, we moved our March meeting to the 20th, and we're combining that with facility tours. And I'm currently working with our maintenance staff, our principals, and getting those capital requests in. And my hope is to have a pretty good fine-tuned capital outlay projected budget projects for the next year, so that when we're on site and you're on site, we can point those out to you and you can physically see what some of those project needs are. And so that when we get to June and July capital outlay planning, you'll have a good idea and a visual of what those actual projects are. So
Do you think that we'll have enough time? Do we want to discuss that?
well, I kind of laid out a timeline and
Right,
in my opinion, it's gonna be really tight. If we did noon, I think we could stretch each visit about 10 to 15 minutes and get closer. Last year,
Looking at the schedule, I thought noon seemed like a better
I agree.
start time.
I'm just afraid by the time we travel from.
The
we're gonna
building to
start at
building
Wakefield,
and
By the time we travel.
I don't want
not
us-
allow-
running in here with our hair on fire.
and last year we kind of did a full day, full building tour. And so maybe this year we can tighten it down to
Right.
where the needs are. And if somebody need to jump in and catch up with us a little later in the day, that'd be fine too, or needed to peel. But I'll do what you guys want to there.
We'll start it. I think if we could start at noon, that'd be ideal.
Wanted to keep sharing our staff's efforts on attendance data. As you recall, coming off of a few years of COVID and illness and all kinds of different requirements, we're back to quote unquote normal, and our staff have hit the ground running hard, and they are making extravagant efforts to engage our families and our students to ensure they're at school, attending school, and reinforcing that importance. And staff are making individual contact with students and families as they watch and monitor the data to ensure that they're at school. And some of those attendance rates are looking really, really good. And so just want to do a big shout out to all of our staff that are working so hard. We know the students can't learn if they're not at school. We know from predictive data, lag data, graduation rate data, that the number one effect size and control we have is attendance at school. And so our staff have been doing really, really well with that.
That's exceptionally impressive for the end of semester numbers, knowing what the infection rates were in December in this county. Can't believe we were able to maintain at that level.
It's been impressive and needs to be definitely recognized. Wanted to give you a brief staffing update. Again, some exciting information to share here. Wow, we must be doing something right because number one, last year we were fully staffed, certified, fully staffed, licensed staff. I don't think there was a district around us that was. I'm making some generalizations there, but if there weren't very many. And so going into this year, we're always worried about what that might look like. And I am so happy to announce in all of our open positions, we've had multiple qualified candidates for our positions, and we have choice. Now, we know, and it's very evident even through our interview process, that whether a veteran teacher or a new teacher, they are in the driver's seat. They get to choose where they want to work. And they have multiple offers and they are shopping. It's not the old days. You know, when I first started being a principal 13, 14 years ago, and would review an open position and have 70 teachers apply. But we are very fortunate that we do have options, certified options, and we have choices. But also during the interview, we're selling ourselves as much as they're selling themselves to us. And so we are fully staffed at the high school and Clay Center. Fully staffed at Lincoln Elementary School after tonight, if you can give approval. Fully staffed at Garfield tonight, if you give full approval. The middle school does have 3 open positions, but again, we have options and we have candidates, and I think we'll have those offers and maneuvering around filled and taken care of by the end of the week, based on the candidate pool that we have available to us. So, very excited about that. And then Wakefield Elementary has a 3rd grade opening. So if you get bored one evening, go hop on an applicant portal of another district and see.
Well, I looked, I think it was 2 weeks ago at Kansas Teaching Jobs website, and I was like, wow, there are openings.
And we're,
Near and far.
and we're selling our retention incentives that you
Mhm.
guys approved. Hey, stay with us, work with us. You get $1,000 check in September for the next 2 years. And I've had especially young teachers say, wow, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah. I also had a person outside of the school situation say, hey, I've heard great things about Clay Center. So we really have to applaud the Grove Clay County board for being proactive about promoting our community, because people know about Clay Center. Well, I've heard, your county has blah, blah, blah. That makes a big difference when teachers are looking at places that they
For
want to
sure.
come work. And we need to thank the staff for all they're doing to promote the county, for making it a place people want to live.
We had our Kansas our teachers of the year.
Yep.
Get in regions, and then they travel around to the teachers of the year within their region. And so we had that crew here a couple weeks
2 weeks
ago,
ago.
and they visited our district, and probably a superintendent, no, but I threw out a recruiting effort to that.
It
group.
was subtle.
Let them know if they were interested that we had places for them, but maybe. So any questions or anything to discuss?
How about the classified positions? How are we doing on those?
What are we, 17-ish?
Is that-
Well, that was certified and staff. So our main areas that need bus drivers, it's
And custodians.
and custodians. We have been short at 2 schools in Clay Center all year. On custodial staff, and our busing, bus driver shortage is significant. Especially when we look at not just our daily routes, but also our activities and finding qualified individuals. And so, Mr. McCoy's been doing a great job in thinking a little bit differently, and instead of always sending a yellow bus that requires a CDL driver, we're sending out a lot of our Suburbans and vehicles that anybody, our sponsors and our coaches can drive. But I think those 2 areas, as we go into negotiations and budget planning for next year, I think custodial hourly wages and bus driver compensation are 2 areas that I think we're gonna have to probably really consider and
Classified staff felt strongly that the rate should stay the same, but we're maybe not seeing that that's something we can sustain as a district based on the openings.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Would agree with that. And the Emporia, Dr. Church, who put together that nationwide certified teacher survey that's now, I mean, states all across the country are adopting this method, and we're gonna keep using that tool every other year to evaluate our certified staff, find out what their greatest needs are. By the way, our #1 thing that had a high engagement factor and a high satisfaction factor, high engagement, low satisfaction from our certified staff was substitutes. So I think that's the 3rd area that I don't have a plan yet, but we need to get with our staff and develop a plan to seriously address those 3 areas. Anyhow, is where I was going with that. Dr. Church and his staff have now created a classified survey that mirrors the same method and data collection of the certified. And so last year we surveyed our classified staff, but this tool should give us a lot more ability to disaggregate that data and find out really what are those high engagement factors and what are our low satisfaction factors. Not only low, but high too. So the high satisfaction areas we want to keep doing really, really good at. But so
I say, set the phone siren going off. Yeah, they've been going on.
They've been having trouble.
All the unidentified objects flying over the United States. Is that the bomb?
For those out there-
They cover.
for those that are listening from home, the sirens are going off, so that's what we're talking about. Just wonder what we're discussing.
Sorry, that was a lot this month, but,
Well, I just wanna say that I think, I agree. I think that, we talk always about the certified staff and, filling the positions. I think it's fantastic. And I think we do a great job. And I'm not suggesting that we don't do a great job in other areas. I do think that we need to stay focused on the classified staff and making sure that the custodians and the bus drivers and the substitutes and things of that nature also get the Paris, absolutely, in the Paris, right? And I know that we have a limited amount of funds, like we don't have an unlimited amount, however. It's just something that I think that we need to stay focused on, so.
and I
And
think
those support roles trickle through the whole building. They are integral to the
Absolutely.
whole system working well. And so when we're short-staffed in one area, the other staff members feel that, and it creates stress in the building, so.
I'll talk about it in my report, but I was looking at a couple buildings feedback from their work this morning, and
And was it-
actually the retaining our classified staff came up.
Yes,
And this was certified teachers today,
Yeah.
and that came up, retaining our classified was
And I'm-
important to them.
I'm bouncing a little bit, but I think this is a great example on fully funding special education that I think maybe the general person doesn't understand. They hear special ed funding and they think that means that just special ed funding would increase. It's actually true, but the other effect of that is if special education is fully funded and we're no longer supplementing special education by
20%.
absolutely, 71%.
700,000, that money becomes available to us in general fund to do these kinds of things.
It frees us up to do other things, so.
We're going
That's
to support special education to 100%. So if the state would give us that additional funds, it would allow us to do other things.
So for example, if the governor's plan were to be adopted. And these are high level numbers, but approximately $150,000 to $200,000 will be freed up in year one. In our general fund and LOB.
Because it is over a 5-year plan was her suggestion, recommendation. Okay.
And then those funds can be used for salaries, because that's the majority of our budget.
Classified,
Right.
certified.
Sorry for the long report.
I think it's
It's important.
Any further questions for Mr. Lawson or discussion items? Okay, we'll then move on to Nina's report.
Well, you can change my 4 open pair positions to 5. First said at our tele board meeting, we had it on Wednesday, I was finding some wood to knock on. I said, we are finally fully staffed in Riley County, finally. Actually, we had an extra, we had a kiddo move in that needed a para. So we hired an extra one, like we've never even been fully staffed, let alone be fully staffed plus one. And then that afternoon, I got a resignation. It's like, oh, maybe it's the real wood, I don't know. That's what I knocked on. But anyway, so now we need another for Riley. Got a school psych SLP and now a gifted teacher for next year. And then trying to Vivian just gave her retirement on there for tonight, so. No replacing her, it's gonna be tough, but we have about 8 or 9 apps so far. I think. Have good, awesome attendance, award up a little bit more. They do appreciate that Sonic drink, so.
And child checks.
Spell checks, we're still working on it, but. And usually we have like 3 or 4 at Lynn and we had 12. So it's really a full day.
Jacqueline?
So I started in my report and I shared about our district leadership team on February 1st, and Dr. Hart was with us with our district leadership team. And he went over kind of an overview of the strategic planning process that you all went through and the community went through, just to kind of give them that brief overview. And if you look at, and I know Brett's gonna go into the little placemat in front of you, but what we really tried to work on with that group is if you look at that top one, that responsive culture of learning. That is where the KISA plan will live, and so that's primarily where we stayed. That they got an overview of the whole picture of kind of how that came to be. But, and also know that it's still in draft form. But again, the KISA plan will live in that top one, that responsive culture of learning. So, we went through a vision activity and how and why, looked at things that are strength, things that we need to grow in. So we did that, with that whole group, and then we broke into teams, and the communication team drafted an email to go to all of our staff to just describe the day. But then secondly, decide what pieces did we do that they wanted to go back and do today, during that PLC time. So they worked on, that draft agenda and kind of the slides, things that activities they wanted to do, and then, they sent me pictures of what their poster boards of what they came up with, and now we're gonna put that all into one to kind of sift through it and find common themes that will help guide us towards our next KISA goals. So communication team worked on that. And then we took the graduation requirements team, and we just kind of started looking at comparing our graduation rates to the states, both the old and new, and kind of where we're headed. And really, the biggest kind of task that I left them with, they did a little research, looking at a few other districts, and also kind of looking at opportunities and obstacles. But specifically where we are different is the technology requirement and English language arts. So they are in review for that right now, and we will bring a recommendation to you all in May. And depending on where that shakes out, it could be that you approve it in June. If you have more questions, we could go get these answers and come back, but we'll at July at the latest, we'll want that approved. Preschool as.
Can you remind me the new graduation requirements, that's this year class or this year? Seventh grade, so we have another year really to work through it.
The reason we want it approved in July is in August, when our 8th graders start working on their IPS, they'll start building their 4 to 6 year plans. And so they need to already know
What they're doing.
how many English credits are there, as they're doing the planning, those kind of things. It's just an example. So as far as preschool goes, as Anita said, child checks are going on. Clay Centers was February 3rd. Wakefield's is this Friday. We have a kind of a little information sheet for people who are interested in preschool. One thing I wanted to point out, the KPP grant. It is what helps fund our full day program. This year, the state, you could only renew a KPP. You couldn't start a new one. And you couldn't ask for more than you received this year. I'm not sure what that means for the future. I'd like to be optimistic and think that's because they're working towards actually
Funding it.
funding 3 and 4 year olds. So the hope anyways. But we have turned in the KPP renewal, and we'll kind of give you a report on what the interest was.
My question with that was, are we okay with getting the same amount? Are we,
Mhm.
I just wanted to make sure that there felt like the amount that we got the first time is gonna help us for next year, or
Oh,
oh,
definitely.
we're gonna be kind of short, or I just wanted to
And they
gauge
make
kind
us
of how
go
you
through
were.
they make us go through
budgetarily.
a revenue, a budgeting, expense and revenue calculator.
Okay,
So that you can't ask for more than you need anyways,
okay,
so.
yeah, I was just
should
kind
be
of
okay.
curious if it was enough or.
So we've been slowly working towards moving that entire preschool budget over to Fund 11. Over the last couple of years, it's a progressive thing because of grant dollars and things that we received, but we are due to the grants that we do apply for, we are able to fully fund our
Great.
preschool programming without supplementing out of general fund between what we get in at-risk or fees or grants.
Great,
And we are, through our preschool conversations, we added a couple questions on there. We've met with Head Start, and so we added a couple questions on there to hopefully if we have a family that make sure we're serving them in the best way, and it might be through Head Start and through us, or just through one or the other, but we added a few questions in there so we could share some information with them, which I think will be really helpful, so. We are still in our ELA curriculum review. They are doing some piloting right now. That has been really good. Our teachers have been able to just dive in, and they've done a great job of just going out there and trying what's before them, and there's some great things out there that we are looking at. So we're hoping by April we can bring something to you. We should bring new courses next month if we have any. Spring and summer opportunities. Our summer dates have went out. We've had great response from our staff for the summer working. We included on our staff availability form a couple new things. We asked if we went ahead and put our summer maintenance in there. So we asked them that. We asked for some technology help, and then we also asked if they were willing to drive a Suburban or a van type of vehicle in case for country busing. We kind of have some outliers that we could send people there, and we've actually had a really good response for that. So that's been great. As far as driver's ed goes, we have 49 students registered. Last year we were about 53. So still a good number. Parent teacher conferences are scheduled here the next couple weeks. Just kind of a reminder, we'll give you the turnout percentages or attendance, but in the fall we do 16 hours worth of conferences and only 8 in the spring. So our buildings, that does look a little different in the spring when they put in that time. Professional learning, last week was the state CTE conference, and we are really lucky that that is held in Manhattan. We took eight or nine of us down there. Some went 1 day, some went 2, some went 3. It was basically if you could get the sub, you could go type of thing. All of the registration and subs were paid for with Perkins grants, so that was really nice. AJ Simon presented for Wakefield on the Wakefield workshop, and he did an excellent job. Got to go watch that. He did a great job on it. We also sent 4 of our, as required by our after school program, we have to send 2 people from each program to our the national conference in Orlando. It was quite the trip. The conference went over well with the traveling and some of the other details. We had to do some problem solving, but that's kind of the name of the game right now with traveling. So got it taken care of, and they are back. Today was professional learning in the buildings, and I'm gonna show you up here on the screen what we are bidding for technology. So the green ones, whoa, sorry about that. Okay, so we will bring back for the March meeting, the 1 class set, and also the first half of the staff. This is just an estimated number, not exact. So we will bring that back in March, and then either April or May, we will bring back the 8th grade one and this one up here. And again, that is just an estimate, and we will see what we need. I'm not sure that we need all the 27,000 up there, so we will bring those to you there. You can show them all. So the green, I think St. Patrick's Day, green is March, and the pink will be either April or May. Okay. Any questions?
What was the response in the buildings today?
The response?
How was it? Yeah.
I've heard from, I talked to 3 of them, and it went well. I can already see some of the common things. I just was printing before you guys arrived tonight. I think it's great that they're getting to, we had some really good conversations with DLT. And they really wanted to make sure that those conversations got to be had back with their building and you can tell that it was, so. Anyways. We will work on things and see what comes out of them, so.
Questions for Jackie? Ready? All right, thank you. All right, move on then to discussion of business items. First of which is policy updates. These were brought to us last month or even the month before. Anything you want to discuss? And I move to approve the policy updates as presented.
Second.
A motion is second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
And April, if I may, I'll just send you guys some of the data you asked for at the last meeting, so if you guys want to talk more about that, just let us know. Any of those pieces. I think it was drug testing staff and. Negotiation. Gotcha.
All right, moving then on to the next item, which is KASB goal setting and strategic planning.
Yeah, so kind of culminating the last several months. Wanted to put this in front of you again, make sure you have some time to look it over and review it. See what you think. We did make some of the changes. I think Linda, you had made a good point about in the vision, so we changed graduate to student. As I recall, that was some feedback and that just made sense when we kind of unpacked that a little bit. We.
The numbers.
The numbers.
To the icons.
Over on the outcomes, we took the word outcomes off above the headings. It was we realized that it got a little confusing on that term and what it meant when we talked to our DLT about it. And so the way to think about it is, as I understand it from the board's point of view, these board goals or the goals that you're adopting and kind of these things over here are just things that we're going to do within the next 3 to 5 years. And then underneath the responsive culture of learning, we'll have our KISA goals will lie. And then the ultimate goal is that we would have a lag measure in each goal area. So a lag measures, your 5-year goal. Where do you want to be? So like, for example, some things we've been talking about, it hasn't completely come together yet. A lot of it's going to depend on the feedback we get from our buildings and then back again from DLT. But that KISA is going to live under responsive culture, but KISA is going to get pretty specific in regards to what data we're going to improve or school improvement, accreditation, that kind of thing. But then is what we would like to do, or kind of the vision right now would be that we have a lag measure or 2 within each goal area. And then underneath that lag measure, we'd have benchmarks that we would strive to meet yearly. Some might be quarterly, some might be annually, and some might be multi-year. And like with goal number 1, you're probably going to have a lag measure for academic and that social emotional piece, unless you can find a lag that measures both. We're going to keep talking to our staff about that and see what they think and what is that ultimate measure of academic social success. So other than that, I don't think we made any changes, Jacqueline. No. Okay.
I feel like it did a good job of condensing the feedback we got from our strategic planning meetings with the community, what they felt was important, and then, kind of bringing it into goals and outcomes for the district.
And so as Britton kind of suggested, I would suggest that we would add to our board planning doc where we have agenda items laid out for the year by month. on the topics that we have to address at the table. I think that was in January. Remember that it was by month and it listed out the topics that my suggestion would be that we add to that agenda planner quarterly updates on these.
Quarterly updates on all 4.
I don't know yet, but somehow talk about,
Mhm.
we're still kind of wrapping it up. Any
Right,
feedback
maybe
that
the
you guys might
spring
have.
would be more appropriate to talk about staff recruitment and retention,
Right,
whereas
Yeah.
the fall, that may not be.
Or
As-
we're gonna be talking about facilities and resources in March
Mm-hmm.
already, so.
That
just
kind
work
of-
itself out.
think about that a little bit if you have any feedback on, but just so we don't lose track of this vision and mission and goals that we're headed and establish some of those accountability pieces. And so kind of from the board table, reflecting in on these areas, and then that'll funnel down to the district and being accountable for their areas of focus, down to our principals, down to our schools, down to our teachers.
At some point too, and I know we're just beginning, but I'd like to see. Those measurables, right, that you're talking about. So, I mean, my role, I call them KPIs, same thing, but essentially, what those are and identifying them, so that way we have some visibility to seeing how we're doing. When you do bring them back and talk about them every quarter, so. Rather than just saying, develop a whatever, or, develop a community-wide plan or develop a strategy, what is that strategy and how are we going to measure it? And so that would be then what we would share at that quarterly meeting, how are we situated as it's, to that goal or to that measurement. I think that would be helpful as we move through this process. I don't know if you've gotten to any of those conversations or not in your teams. It's kind of in the weeds, right?
It is.
We don't need to live there. However, I do think in order for us to know how we're doing, we're probably gonna have to get there every now and again.
It's a lot to unpack. And, it's kind of our RDX, if you can, for each goal area, I think they put it in the. Paraphrasing a little, but they say basically, as you look at these wildly important goals, or what is the most important thing? So in other words, if you could focus on one area within each goal area and not change anything else on how you operate, what is that one thing that would cause the largest area of growth? That sounds really simple, but it's a lot to unpack, so. Looking forward to the work with our buildings and our GLT, and it'll be in, the work will take the whole semester. If not longer, but we will get there.
So what do you need from us? I mean, I feel like we've gone through this process. We've got great community involvement. This is the first time for many of us to be through this, right? So I don't want to just hand you something that, you have to go and then make work. So how can we help you? Do you need more conversation? Do you need more commitment? What do you need from us to be able to continue to move forward with this? Or maybe you don't need anything. Maybe you have what you need.
I think in my opinion, at this point in time, I think the work that you've done to get here and establish the board goals now can launch us into the work of figuring out how we're going to do it. And then reporting back when we have that plan in place and we're ready to gather some more feedback from you. And so I think from my perspective would be, if you guys are ready, would be to give a final blessing on these here. Just to reassure that when we go back to our DLT, that we're working on the right word, if that makes sense.
I mean, I feel like it's a representation of what we discussed in a lot of the groups that we met with in December and the things that we've been discussing since then. Having Dr. Harding here, helping us consolidate them, helping you guys in your team meetings, consolidate them into something that makes sense for our district. I think that's what we have here, but I'm just one person, so that's my opinion. So I mean, I am for it. But. I'm not the only one on the table, so.
Are we looking for a motion to approve the mission, vision, and goals as presented?
I think so. If you guys are ready.
I so move that we approve the mission, vision, and goals for USD 379 as presented.
Second.
The motion second to approve this is presented. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Okay.
So we will. Website tomorrow morning, Jack. And we'll get a date, we'll make sure they're dated, and then we will. Keep doing the work, so thank you for putting in all the time and effort to get this done. It was involved a lot of people, a lot of coordination, and a lot of your time, and it's greatly appreciated, so.
And we spent some district funds to do it, so we'll make sure we do it right. Okay. All right, so then the next item is staffing, 23-24 staffing.
Yes, so as I kind of tie it back to my super report where I talked about our estimated legal max. One piece of that I didn't mention was the high density weighting that we received for the first time ever this year. And that was again due to the higher levels of free and reduced lunch, qualifying students. And so we had never received that before. And it's a formula within the budgeting software. You can do it as you can qualify as a district, or you can qualify by building, and we did both. And I was going to share some of those numbers. I have it right here. So this year in 22-23, free and reduced lunch. And so anything over that 35% mark qualifies you, starts getting you portions of additional weightings. Again, a combination of building and district. So Lincoln Elementary School is at 47%. Garfield was 41%. The middle school in Clay Center was at 43%. The high school in Clay Center is at 32%. Wakefield Elementary School is at 56%. Wakefield High School is at 40%. And our district total was at 42.9. And so again, anything over that 35, we start receiving weightings for the high density. And so we'll receive the equivalent of about 11.1 FTE. This is estimated. We'll get audited on it, and then they'll do the verification. They do the random checks. And so that number can fluctuate a little bit, but it generally doesn't move around that much. And so our, as we do staffing every spring, even as we move people around or bring new people on, we do that with the intent to not add FTE and stay neutral. We are recommending tonight that we do utilize that high density at risk weighting funding that we received to add. It would be the equivalent of a 0.5 FTE, but it would provide a full-time intervention teacher at Wakefield Elementary School to help provide their students intervention support in math and reading. They currently have a half-time. And so we think that's what our data shows and what that building needs at this time. So because we were adding FTE, I wanted to make sure you guys were on board with it.
I move to get final approval to add an additional 0.5 certified FTE.
Second. The motion is second to approve. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. I think that takes us then to executive session. Not mistaken. Yes. So we'll take a couple minutes break and come back for executive session. Does anybody need to go into negotiations? Any questions anybody has that they want to discuss?
You know, the big things are until we have health insurance, until we
Yeah.
have work comp, until we have property casualty. And I'm, you know,
We
if,
can.
I think the real question is, do you have anything to discuss? If not, from our viewpoint, the March meeting would be plenty of time for us to still get a letter done. And get ready. Just, Andrea, probably just go ahead and schedule a CCA now, sometime after our March meeting. So that when the board does talk about it, we can have a letter ready.
Just remember the March meeting is on the 20th, and we have to exchange by the 31st. Yeah.
Are you guys okay with that? I mean, we can,
Is there any chance we'll have those numbers by March 20th?
Doubt it.
Okay, great.
Doubtful. So,
never.
anybody else want to be on the negotiation team with me this year? Anybody?
I'm willing to serve on the negotiation team if we need an additional representative.
It'd be nice to have an additional representative. So, if possible, would be- I would appreciate it, as would I'm certain the rest of the board and the teachers negotiation group as well. Okay, so then we'll move on then to the non-elected personnel.
Make sure you keep on your radar to get your training done. And get print your certificate so we can have it on file.
Thank you.
August can send you. Yeah,
Please, thank you.
Unless there's no wild objections, I can start working on it, I guess.
it's pretty.
Okay.
3.5 hours and then you gotta go to peak it twice.
It's not that bad. It's about 45.
Sure you still want to be on there?
Sometimes we do things that to serve, not because we want.
Sometimes we keep our eyes down. Okay, all right, so I move we go into executive session to discuss personnel pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KLMA. The open meeting shall resume at
Personnel 20 minutes.
Okay.
15. Do 15.
let's go 7:35 here in this room. Executive session will include, I'm sorry, resume here in this room. After executive session, we'll come back here. Executive session will include the board superintendent council and you recommended to join, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you,
Second.
all those in favor? Carry 7-0.
button.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, all right, and maybe go into executive session to discuss student matters and early graduation requests pursuant to the student exception under KOMA. The open meeting will resume at, let's go 8:10. Back here in this room, the executive session will include the board superintendent and council,
I needed to start too, please.
and I needed to start. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries 11-0. Move we go into executive session for an additional 10 minutes on the same topic.
Okay.
The motion is second. All those in favor, motion carries 7-0.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, well, another round here real quick. I move we go into executive session to discuss personnel pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA. The open meet, hello, and that the open meeting will resume at, let's just call it 8:30. And back here in this room, it will include the board superintendent and council. All those in favor, motion carries 7-0. Everybody's back. Okay, so let's move on to personnel. Personnel report. Questions about anything listed here? Now I'll move to approve the personnel report, including the supplemental updates as presented.
Second.
Motion and second, any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is some contract renewals for the director positions. Any questions on those items? Move to approve the contract renewal for directors as presented.
Second.
Motion and second, all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We adjourn. Okay. Motion carries 7-0.